And let me ask you something. And have you ever noticed how some women don't have to chase attention? They don't have to convince a man to like them. And yet somehow, and they walk into a room and hearts just soften. It's not because they're the loudest. It's not because they're the most perfect. And it's definitely not because they're trying too hard. It's because of something far more powerful and far more subtle. Today, and I'm going to show you 4 feminine gestures, simple, natural, almost effortless, that can instantly melt a man's heart. Not tricks, not games, but authentic signals that make a man feel something real. And when a man feels something real, that's when everything changes. And when we talk about feminine energy, most people immediately think about appearance, how someone dresses, how they look, whether they fit a certain ideal. But that's actually the least powerful part of it. Feminine energy is not about perfection. It's not about having flawless features, the right outfit, or saying all the right things. It's about something much deeper and far more magnetic. It's about presence. Presence is the way you exist in a moment. And it's how fully you are there, how comfortable you are in your own skin, and how open you are to the experience you're having. And the truth is, and people don't fall for perfection, they fall for how they feel around you. You can meet someone who looks perfect on paper, but if being around them feels tense, forced, or disconnected, the attraction fades quickly. On the other hand, and someone who may not fit every conventional standard can walk into a room and completely captivate people simply because of the energy they bring. And that's the difference. Presence creates connection. Perfection creates pressure. When you're focused on being perfect, you're constantly monitoring yourself. And you're thinking, do I look okay? Did I say that right? Am I coming across the right way? And that inner dialogue pulls you out of the moment. And it creates a kind of invisible wall between you and the other person. Instead of experiencing the interaction, you're managing it. And people can feel that. And they may not be able to explain it, but they sense that something is slightly off. But when you shift into presence, everything changes. And you're no longer trying to impress, you're simply engaging. You're listening, reacting, enjoying, and allowing yourself to be seen as you are. And that kind of energy is incredibly disarming. It puts the other person at ease because you're at ease. It invites them to relax, to open up, and to feel more like themselves too. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most drawn to someone, and it probably wasn't because they were trying to be perfect. It was because they were as real. Maybe they laughed freely, or they listened in a way that made you feel heard, or they had a calm confidence that didn't need validation. That's presence. It's subtle, but it's powerful. And there's also a quiet confidence that comes with presence, not the loud attention-seeking kind, but a grounded, steady confidence that says, and I'm comfortable being me. And that's incredibly attractive because it removes the need for performance. You're not trying to win someone over, and you're allowing a natural connection to form. And that shift alone can completely transform how people respond to you. And another important part of presence is emotional awareness. When you're present, you're tuned in, not just to yourself, but to the other person. And you notice their tone, their energy, their reactions. You respond in a way that feels natural rather than rehearsed. And this creates a sense of genuine interaction, which is something people crave but rarely find in a world where so many interactions feel rushed or laissez-faire. And here's the irony. And the more you let go of trying to be perfect, the more attractive you actually become. Because perfection is rigid, but presence is fluid. And perfection tries to control the outcome, but presence allows the moment to unfold naturally. And in that space, real chemistry has a chance to grow. And so instead of asking yourself, how can I be perfect? Start asking, how can I be more present? That might mean slowing down your thoughts and focusing on the conversation in front of you, or simply allowing yourself to enjoy the moment without overanalyzing it. And it might mean embracing small imperfections, like a laugh that's a little too loud or a moment where you don't have the perfect response. And then realizing that those are the very things that make you human and relatable. At the end of the day, and feminine energy isn't something you put on. It's something you allow. It's already there beneath the pressure, beneath the overthinking, and beneath the need to be perfect. And when you let that natural presence come through, You don't have to chase attention or force attraction. People feel it. And when they feel it, they're drawn to you, not because you were perfect, but because you were real. There's something incredibly powerful about eye contact, but not the kind that feels intense, forced, or intimidating. I'm talking about soft eye contact, the kind that feels warm, inviting, and just a little bit playful. When you combine that with a genuine smile, it creates a moment that can say more than an entire conversation ever could. And most people underestimate how much can be communicated without words. Before you even say a single sentence, and your eyes and your expression are already telling a story. They reveal whether you're open or closed off, confident or unsure, interested or distracted. And when your eye contact is soft and your smile is real, it sends a very clear message. I'm comfortable, I'm present, and I'm happy to be here with you. And the key word here is soft, because there's a big difference between staring someone down and gently holding their gaze. And soft eye contact isn't about locking eyes in a way that feels overwhelming. It's about a relaxed, natural connection and looking at someone with curiosity rather than pressure. It's the kind of gaze that lingers just long enough to create a spark and then eases away, almost like a quiet rhythm between two people. When you pair that with a genuine smile, something shifts, not a forced smile, and not the kind you put on because you think you're supposed to, but a real one that comes from a place of warmth. A genuine smile reaches your eyes, and it softens their entire face. It makes you appear approachable and safe, and it instantly lowers any tension in the interaction. And that's what makes this gesture so powerful. It creates emotional safety in any interaction, especially in the early stages. And there's always a small level of uncertainty. People are wondering how they're being perceived, whether they're being judged, and whether they should hold back or open up. But when you offer soft eye contact and a sincere smile, you remove a lot of that uncertainty, and you're silently telling the other person, you're okay here. You don't have to prove anything. That feeling is incredibly rare, and because it's rare, and it's deeply attractive. Another reason this gesture works so well is that it shows confidence in a quiet, understated way. And you're not trying to grab attention or dominate the moment. You're simply allowing yourself to be seen. Holding someone's gaze even briefly and requires a level of self-assurance. It says, and I'm not afraid of connection. And that kind of confidence is far more compelling than anything loud or exaggerated. And there's also a subtle emotional impact that happens when you look at someone this way. Eye contact, especially when it's warm and steady, and creates a sense of intimacy, even between people who have just met. It makes the interaction feel more personal, more meaningful. It's as if, for a moment, and everything else fades into the background, and there's just this shared connection. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't require perfection. And you don't need to have the perfect words or the perfect timing. A simple glance and a smile, when done with authenticity, can leave a lasting impression, and it can turn an ordinary moment into something memorable. But here's where a lot of people go wrong. They overthink it. They start wondering, am I holding eye contact too long? Should I smile now? Does this look natural? And the moment you start analyzing it like that, it loses its magic. And because his gesture isn't about technique, it's about feeling. It's about genuinely enjoying the interaction and letting that enjoyment show. And if you feel a little nervous, that's okay. In fact, a hint of shyness can make the moment even more endearing. Looking away briefly and then returning with a soft smile can create a sense of playfulness and authenticity. It shows that you're human, not performing some perfect routine. And it's also important to remember that this isn't about trying to win someone over. It's about expressing openness. And you're not using eye contact and a smile as tools to manipulate someone's feelings. You're using them as a natural extension of your presence and an honest reflection of how you feel in that moment. And when it comes from that place, people can sense it immediately. And there's a kind of warmth that lingers after an interaction like this. Even if the conversation itself was short or simple, the feeling stays. And the person walks away thinking, there was something about that moment, something I can't quite explain, but it felt good. And more often than not, and that something is the way you made them feel seen and at ease without saying much at all. And so instead of trying to perfect your words or plan every interaction, focus on something much simpler. Allow yourself to look at someone with softness and allow yourself to smile when you genuinely feel it. Stay present in that moment, even if it's just for a few seconds, because sometimes the smallest gestures and the ones that require the least effort are the ones that leave the biggest impact. There's a big difference between flattery and genuine appreciation, and people can feel that difference instantly. Flattery is often exaggerated, vague, and sometimes even a little forced, and it's what you say when you're trying to impress someone. But genuine appreciation is something else entirely. It's grounded, specific, and real, and it comes from actually noticing something about the other person and choosing to acknowledge it. And that's what makes it so powerful. And when you genuinely appreciate someone, you're not just giving them a compliment, you're giving them a moment of being seen. And you're showing them that you're paying attention, that you value something about who they are, not just how they appear on the surface. And in a world where most interactions are quick, distracted, and often superficial, that kind of attention stands out more than you might think. And a lot of people assume that attraction is built on big gestures or dramatic moments, but more often it's built in these small, meaningful exchanges. And a simple sentence like, "I really like how passionate you are when you talk about that," can have a much deeper impact than something generic like, "and you're amazing." Why? Because it's specific. It shows that you were listening, that you were engaged, and that what they said actually mattered to you. And that kind of appreciation creates an emotional connection almost instantly. It also taps into something very human, the desire to feel valued. And everyone wants to feel like they matter, like they bring something unique to the table. And when you reflect that back to someone in a genuine way, and it creates a sense of warmth and closeness. It's not about boosting someone's ego, and it's about recognizing something real in them and letting them know it didn't go unnoticed. But the key here is authenticity. And if appreciation feels rehearsed or strategic, it loses its effect. People are incredibly good at picking up on sincerity. And if you're saying something just because you think you should, it comes across as empty. But when it comes from a real observation and something you actually felt or noticed, it carries weight. And another important aspect of genuine appreciation is that it shifts the focus away from trying to impress and toward creating connection. Instead of thinking, "and what can I say to make them like me?" you're thinking, "What do I actually appreciate about this person?" That shift changes your entire energy, and it makes you more present, more engaged, and more grounded in the interaction. And interestingly, that makes you more attractive too. And because you're someone who can genuinely appreciate others, it shows emotional intelligence. It shows that you're not just focused on yourself, but that you're aware of the people around you. It creates a sense of depth, and depth is something that people are naturally drawn to. And there's also a subtle balance to it. Genuine appreciation doesn't mean overloading someone with compliments or putting them on a pedestal. In fact, and too much can feel overwhelming or even insincere. It's about choosing the right moments and those small pauses in conversation where something meaningful can be acknowledged. It's about quality, not quantity. For example, and if someone shares a story about something they've worked hard on, instead of just saying, "That's cool," you might say, "and I really respect how dedicated you are to that." Not everyone has that kind of focus. It's simple, but it carries meaning, and it shows that you're not just hearing them, you're understanding them. And that kind of response creates a deeper level of engagement. And it also encourages the other person to open up more. When people feel appreciated, they feel safer expressing themselves, and they're more likely to share their thoughts, their experiences, and even their vulnerabilities. And that's where real connection begins, not on the surface, but in those more honest, unfiltered moments. Another thing to remember is that genuine appreciation isn't just about words. It can be reflected in your tone and your expression, even the way you listen. A slight nod, a warm smile, or a moment of focused attention can reinforce what you're saying and make it feel even more real. And it's a combination of verbal and non-verbal communication that creates the full effect. And perhaps the most important part is this: you can't fake curiosity, and genuine appreciation comes naturally when you're actually interested in the person in front of you. When you're curious about who they are, what they think, and what matters to them, appreciation becomes effortless. It's no longer something you have to think about, it just happens. And so instead of trying to come up with the perfect compliment, shift your mindset, pay attention, listen more closely. Notice the little things and the way they speak, the things they care about, the effort they put into something. And when something stands out to you, say it. Simply, honestly, and without overthinking it. Because in the end, it's not about saying something impressive. It's about saying something as real. And when someone feels genuinely appreciated, even for a brief moment, it stays with them. It creates a feeling they associate with you, a sense of warmth and respect and connection. And that feeling is what truly makes an impact. There's something quietly powerful about the way you carry yourself and something that goes far beyond words. Before you even speak, your body language is already communicating how you feel about yourself, about the moment, and about the person in front of you. And one of the most attractive qualities you can express through your body is a sense of calm, relaxed femininity. And this isn't about striking a pose or trying to look a certain way. It's about the absence of tension. It's about moving, sitting, and existing in a way that feels natural and unforced. When your body is relaxed, it sends a message that you're comfortable in your own space. And that kind of comfort is incredibly inviting. Think about the difference between someone who is stiff, rushed, and slightly anxious in their movements, and versus someone who is at ease, who takes their time, who doesn't feel the need to fill every silence, who seems grounded in the moment. And without saying anything, the second person creates a completely different emotional atmosphere. They make things feel calmer, lighter, and more enjoyable. And that's the essence of relaxed, feminine body language. It's not about doing more, it's actually about doing less, but with intention. And when you slow down your movements, even slightly, it changes how you're perceived. Reaching for something more gently, turning your head without suddenness, and allowing your gestures to flow instead of being abrupt. These small adjustments create a sense of grace. And grace isn't about perfection, it's about ease. And it's about moving in a way that feels aligned rather than hurried. Slowing down also has another effect. It signals that you're not seeking approval. And when people rush or fidget, it often comes from a place of nervous energy, as if they're trying to get it right or prove something. But when you're relaxed, and it shows that you're not in a hurry to impress, you're simply present, allowing things to unfold naturally. And that creates a subtle but powerful sense of confidence. Posture plays a role here as well, but not in a rigid, overly formal way. And it's not about forcing yourself to sit perfectly straight or holding your body in an unnatural position. It's about openness, uncrossed arms, a relaxed stance, and shoulders that aren't tense. These small details make you appear more approachable. And they signal that you're open to connection rather than closed off or guarded. Even the way you occupy space matters. When you're comfortable and you don't shrink yourself or try to disappear, but you also don't dominate the space aggressively. There's a balance, and you exist fully in your space without apology. And that balance is deeply attractive because it reflects self-assurance without arrogance. In another important aspect is stillness. In a world where people are constantly moving, checking their phones or shifting their attention, stillness stands out. And when you can sit or stand calmly without unnecessary movement, it creates a sense of grounded energy. It shows that you're not restless or distracted, and you're fully there. And that level of presence can be incredibly captivating. Your gestures also become more meaningful when they're not rushed, and a simple movement like brushing your hair back or turning slightly towards someone as they speak can feel more intentional when it's done with ease. And it's not about exaggerating anything. It's about allowing your natural movements to come through without tension or self-consciousness. And perhaps one of the most important elements of relaxed body language is comfort with silence. And a lot of people feel the need to constantly fill gaps in conversation, either with words or nervous gestures. But when you're truly at ease, and you don't fear those quiet moments, you allow them, you sit in them without discomfort. And that creates a different kind of connection, and one that doesn't rely on constant stimulation, but instead feels steady and real. This kind of energy has a calming effect on others when you're relaxed, and it gives the other person permission to relax too. It reduces pressure, lowers defenses, and creates an environment where genuine interaction can happen. And people often don't even realize why they feel more comfortable around someone like this. They just know that they do. And it's also important to understand that this isn't about being slow in a dull or disengaged way. It's not about lacking energy or enthusiasm. And you can still be expressive, animated, and full of life. The difference is that your energy feels grounded rather than scattered, and it feels intentional rather than reactive. And like everything else, this comes back to how you feel internally. And relaxed body language isn't something you can fully fake. It's a reflection of your state of mind. The more comfortable you are with yourself, and the more naturally your body will reflect that comfort. So instead of trying to control every movement, focus on easing the tension within. Take a breath and slow down and allow yourself to settle into the moment. Because when you do, your body follows. And when your body reflects that calm, grounded presence, and it creates a quiet kind of attraction, one that doesn't demand attention, but naturally draws people in. It's subtle, but it's powerful. And often, and it's the difference between an interaction that feels ordinary and one that feels truly memorable. At the heart of everything we've talked about, and there's one principle that quietly determines whether any of it truly works or completely falls flat, and that is authenticity. You can learn every gesture and every technique, every right way to say or do something, but if it doesn't come from a real place, people will feel the disconnect. And authenticity isn't about being perfect. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about allowing yourself to be seen without constantly editing who you are. And it's the difference between expressing something because you genuinely feel it and expressing it because you think it will get you a certain reaction. And that difference, even when it's subtle, changes everything about how it's received. When something is authentic, it carries a certain emotional weight and it feels grounded, natural, and believable. But when something is forced, even if it's technically correct, it feels slightly off and maybe not enough for someone to consciously point it out, but enough for them to sense it. That's why authenticity isn't just important, it's essential. And a lot of people fall into the trap of trying to perform. They think, if I just say this at the right moment, or I just act this way, and they'll like me. And while that might create short-term attraction, it rarely creates real connection. Because connection isn't built on performance, and it's built on truth. It's built on those small, honest moments where someone feels like they're interacting with the real you, and not a version of you that's trying to impress. There's also a kind of freedom that comes with authenticity, and when you stop trying to be everything you think someone else wants, you remove a huge amount of pressure from yourself, and you're no longer constantly analyzing your words, your gestures, or your reactions. Instead, you're simply responding to the moment as it happens. And that natural flow is far more attractive than anything rehearsed. And it's important to understand that authenticity doesn't mean saying everything that comes to mind without thought or awareness. And it's not about being careless or overly blunt. It's about being honest in a way that still respects the moment and the person you're interacting with. And it's a balance between being real and being considerate. One of the reasons authenticity is so powerful is because it creates trust. And when someone feels that what they're seeing is genuine, they relax. They don't feel like they have to question your intentions or read between the lines. And they can simply experience the interaction as it is. And trust is one of the strongest foundations for any meaningful connection. And another important aspect of authenticity is consistency. When your words, your tone, and your body language all align, it creates a sense of coherence. And there's no confusion, no mixed signals. What someone sees is what they get. And that clarity is incredibly refreshing in a world where people often feel uncertain about where they stand with others. And authenticity also allows for imperfection. And that's where real connection often lies. Those small unpolished moments, the slightly awkward laugh, and the pause while you gather your thoughts, the genuine reaction you didn't plan. These are the things that make you relatable. And they remind the other person that you're human just like them. And that shared humanity creates a deeper bond than any flawless performance ever could. And it's also worth noting that authenticity naturally filters the right people into your life. When you're being real, and the people who connect with you are connecting with who you actually are, not who you're pretending to be. And that means the connections you form are more aligned, more genuine, and more likely to last. On the other hand, and if you build attraction based on a version of yourself that isn't real, it creates a disconnect that eventually becomes difficult to maintain. And there's a quiet confidence in authenticity as well. It says, I'm not trying to be someone else, and I'm comfortable being me. And that kind of confidence doesn't need to be loud or attention-seeking. It's steady, grounded, and deeply attractive. And it draws people in not because it demands attention, but because it feels real. And here's something important to remember. And authenticity doesn't mean you'll be liked by everyone. And that's okay. In fact, it's necessary. And because trying to appeal to everyone often leads to losing yourself in the process. Authenticity is about being true to who you are, and even if that means not everyone connects with it, the right people will. At the end of the day, all the gestures we've talked about, eye contact, smiles, and appreciation body language, they're not meant to be tools you use to create a certain outcome. They're meant to be expressions of what you genuinely feel, and when they come from a real place, they have power. When they don't, they feel empty. So instead of focusing on getting everything right, focus on being real and pay attention to what you actually feel in the moment. Allow your reactions to come naturally. Trust that you don't need to perform to create connection. And because the truth is, the most attractive thing you can bring into any interaction isn't a perfect line or a perfectly timed gesture. It's you fully present and unfiltered and genuine. And when that's what you're offering, the connection you create isn't just momentary, it's meaningful. There's a subtle art to light and playful teasing that often gets misunderstood. Some people hear the word teasing and immediately think of sarcasm, putting someone down or trying to be clever at someone else's expense. But that's not what this is about at all. Real, effective, playful teasing is warm, light, and rooted in connection, not criticism. At its core, playful teasing is a way of creating emotional movement. It brings energy into an interaction, and it breaks the monotony of predictable conversations and replaces it with something a little more dynamic, a little more alive. And instead of everything feeling polite and surface level, it introduces a spark, something that makes the other person feel engaged and curious. And think about how most conversations go, especially in the beginning. People are often cautious. They ask safe questions, give safe answers, and try not to say anything that might come across the wrong way. While that can be comfortable, it can also feel a bit flat. There's no tension and no playfulness, no sense of excitement. And without that, it's hard for attraction to grow. This is where playful teasing changes things. When done right, and it shows that you're not afraid to step slightly outside of that safe zone. It signals confidence, not in a loud or aggressive way, but in a relaxed and self-assured way. You're comfortable enough to have a little fun, to add a bit of unpredictability to the moment, and that unpredictability is what makes the interaction feel more engaging. For example, and instead of responding in a completely straightforward way to something someone says, you might lightly challenge it in a playful tone. Not to argue, and not to correct, but to create a moment of back and forth energy. It's less about the words themselves and more about the feeling behind them. The tone and the smile, the timing, those are what make it land as playful rather than critical. And that's an important distinction, because without warmth, and teasing can easily be misunderstood. If it feels sharp or dismissive, it pushes people away instead of drawing them in. But when it's paired with a smile and a light tone and an overall sense of kindness, it becomes something entirely different. It feels like an invitation rather than a challenge, and playful teasing also creates a sense of equality. Instead of putting someone on a pedestal or trying too hard to impress them, and you're engaging with them as an equal. You're not afraid to lightly push back, to have a bit of fun, and to show that you have your own personality and perspective. And that balance, where neither person is trying too hard to win the other over, and creates a much more natural and attractive dynamic. Another reason this works so well is that it taps into emotion. Attraction isn't built on logic, and it's built on feeling. And playful teasing brings out feelings like amusement, curiosity, and excitement. It keeps the interaction from becoming predictable. And it creates little moments that stand out, that make someone think about the conversation later and smile. There's also a sense of authenticity in it. And when you're willing to be a little playful, it shows that you're not overly guarded. You're not stuck in a script or trying to say the perfect thing, and you're responding in the moment, allowing your personality to come through. And that spontaneity is incredibly attractive because it feels real. And at the same time, there's a balance to be maintained. Playful teasing isn't about constantly joking or never being serious. If everything is a tease, and it can lose its impact or even become tiring. The power of it comes from contrast, moments of lightness mixed with moments of genuine conversation. And that contrast keeps things interesting and gives the interaction depth. It's also important to be aware of the other person's responses. And good teasing is responsive, not one-sided. You're paying attention to how they react, whether they smile, laugh, or engage back. And if they seem uncomfortable or unsure, that's a signal to soften or shift. The goal isn't to push boundaries, it's to create a shared moment of fun. And another subtle aspect of playful teasing is that it often invites the other person to step into that same energy. When you introduce a bit of playfulness, and it gives them permission to do the same. The interaction becomes less about getting everything right and more about enjoying the moment. And when both people are in that space, the connection naturally becomes stronger. There's also something memorable about it, and people tend to forget conversations that feel routine, but they remember how you made them feel. A moment of shared laughter, a playful exchange, that sticks, and it creates a positive emotional imprint that goes beyond the words themselves. And perhaps most importantly, and playful teasing reflects a certain comfort with yourself. It shows that you don't take everything too seriously and that you're able to enjoy the interaction without overthinking it. And that come at ease is incredibly appealing because it makes everything feel lighter and more natural. And so instead of trying to craft perfect responses or keep everything overly safe, allow a bit of playfulness to enter the conversation, and not in a forced or calculated way, but in a way that feels natural to you. Let yourself respond with a little humor, a little curiosity, a little spark. And because sometimes it's those small, playful moments that turn an ordinary interaction into something that feels alive, engaging, and genuinely enjoyable.